Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome back to the second annual Emarsys Digital Festival, Retail Revival, putting the customer back into commerce. A very warm welcome to those of you who've joined us over the last few days of the festival. We're so delighted to have you back. But an equally warm welcome to those of you who may be joining us for the first time. Regardless, we hope you're having an inspiring, thought-provoking, and enjoyable time with us. I'm Sarah Richter. I'm the CMO here at Emarsys, and I'm delighted to be your host for the next couple of hours. But before we dive into the meat of today's Mainstage content, and we have a lot for you, just a few reminders of how you can best engage and get the most out of your experience today. Do customize your session. In front of you, you can see a bunch of different windows and icons that can be clicked, resized, repositioned, minimized, etc. These are here to help you personalize your experience and to allow you to get the most out of the content, to consume it how and when you want to. Ask us questions. We've been delighted that so many of you have engaged with us with direct questions over the last couple days, and our team of experts is still standing by to answer those questions as they come in over the next day. If you haven't had a chance to take advantage of it, there's a Q&A window on your screen that you can use. Have you joined the festival Slack community? If not, you're missing out on networking and collaborating with your peers who have been there over the last couple days chatting about the content. If you'd like to join now, you'll find a call to action on the right-hand side of your screen. Go ahead and click on it, and you'll be there with everybody else chatting about the content that's come and what's still to come today. And the Slack community will live on long after the festival, so you'll still have an opportunity afterwards to continue to chat with your peers. And last, but definitely not least, don't forget to register for more sessions. I know it's the last day of the festival and it's the last main stage, but even so, afterward today, we do have more great speakers and brands lined up for you, and all of our content will be available on demand for you to watch at your leisure long after the festival has come to a conclusion. Which leads me to chat a bit about what's been going on around the globe in the last 3 days. We've had multiple sessions in multiple languages and time zones for our fantastic mobile audience. Some of the highlights so far have included Gymshark, Pizza Hut, Home Depot, Booktopia, the Bluebell Group, Q Clothing, Instant Brands, Charbroil, and more. And don't forget, all of this content is already available for you on demand, so you can watch it at your leisure. And I'll give you a little sneak peek later about the other sessions that are lined up after we get done with Mainstage. While today's festival has been inspired, or last year's festival was inspired by the retail renaissance we witnessed as brands and marketeers across the globe reinvented and reimagined themselves in the face of real struggle and constant change. This year, we've taken inspiration from the green shoots we're starting to see drive the beginnings of a retail revival. And so far, we've explored that revival through a multitude of thought-provoking stories from brands in Europe, Asia Pacific, and across the Americas. And you may remember on day one of Mainstage, we looked at retail revival through the lens of the future of retail, with insights from Sucharita Connolly from Forrester, as well as Paul Terrell from Gaia and Kristen Smith of Hannah Anderson. Yesterday, our Mainstage focus shifted to empowering commerce anywhere, with industry experts from the Selling Group, Facebook, SAP, and Emarsys, who discussed how we all need to strive to bring commerce to the customer rather than pushing the customer across the different channels. Today, it's all about putting the customer back into commerce. Customer loyalty continues to be of the utmost importance for all of us. And we know that success hinges on providing exceptional, personalized experiences to each and every customer. So today, we're going to explore the importance of customer obsession in every organization and how we can meet those sky-high customer expectations and deliver meaningful outcomes for our businesses. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. On Mainstage, we're going to kick things off on a high. I am super excited to be shortly joined by none other than Bobby Berk and Antoni Porowski from the hit Netflix series Queer Eye for a really uplifting start. We're going to chat about their journeys from the world of retail and hospitality and how they inspire change in others and what can be learned from the amazing people with whom they've worked. Queer Eye is going to be a tough act to follow, but our next speakers will be more than up to the task. Courtney Levold, Head of Revenue for North America at Emarsys, is going to host an interactive session with Rick Alameda, VP Commerce at PUMA, Anna Cersei, CEO of Joy Shop, and our own Ben Norton, VP Strategic Adoption at Emarsys, during which we'll explore what it truly means to know your customer. I'll then have the pleasure of welcoming Daniel and Melanie Marsden, the amazing husband and wife co-founders of Lounge Underwear, one of the fastest growing e-commerce brands in Europe. They've been named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Times Under 30 Rich list, having started the company in their own lounge just 5 years ago and growing it to a 40 million plus direct-to-consumer online only business. And for our final main stage session of the festival, we'll welcome back Courtney and Ben from Emarsys, who are going to share some of the challenges and the opportunities they believe are associated with chasing the holy grail of delivering customer lifetime value while still continuing to meet short-term business goals and profit margins. So let's get started. I'm sure all of you know Bobby Berk and Antoni Porowski as members of the Fab Five on Netflix Emmy Award-winning series Queer Eye, which is now in its 5th amazing season. And I'm sure you know that Queer Eye is one of the most popular shows on Netflix, and it's available in over 100 countries. But did you know that Bobby actually started his career in retail, and today is the founder and the CEO of his own comprehensive lifestyle destination, BobbyBerk.com? Or that his design firm has quickly become a leader in the home building industry? Did you also know that Antoni is a self-taught chef and the author of the best-selling cookbook, Antoni in the Kitchen? Or that he co-owns a restaurant in New York? They both have a real and lasting connection to the world of retail and hospitality. But before I ask Bobby and Antoni to join us, let me give you a little peek into the fabulous world of Queer Eye.
I have struggled with my identity as a gay person. I feel like I can't be the kind of leader in the church that I could be.
I've actually been teased my entire life for being tall.
I'm not sure how to take care of a 3-year-old. I always feel inadequate.
Someone call 911 because this is a Fab Five confidence emergency.
Actually, we shouldn't do that because we should only use 911 responsibly. Let's start that beauty montage.
Oh my goodness.
When's the last time you cooked?
I had no idea, but we killed it.
We did.
Before you get overwhelmed, I have a plan.
I think we're going to love it.
Okay, what do we got? I like my butt rubbed and my Ew!
Pause.
You know those metal bins that you can, like, put clothes in and burn them? Do you have one of those?
There doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day I feel like I wasn't there for.
My friends, they'll get all the attention and I'm just off in the corner.
These expectations that you're holding on to, they're causing burdens in your life.
There's a kid in my congregation. He came out this year. I felt guilty. I wasn't able to come out until much later in life.
Would you ever tell that kid they didn't come out soon enough?
No.
So why do you tell yourself that?
I needed to hear that.
You're a strong woman. Show them.
Your best dates aren't behind you. They're still in front of you.
So, what happened here?
I don't know about you, but I find that video is so uplifting and inspiring. So let's get to know the amazing presenters of this incredible show. Bobby, Antoni, welcome to the festival.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning. I don't know why that trailer still always makes me cry, too, and I've lived it.
Well, that's a good thing, right? Because it shows it still says something that's really meaningful. I think that's fantastic. And I'll admit to tearing up when I was running through earlier today, so I'm good with that. So listen, you both have had such remarkable, unique journeys coming from retail and hospitality to Netflix. I mean, to Netflix, right? I think everyone would love to hear a little bit about that. Maybe, Bobby, you could kick things off and tell us a bit about your story.
So my journey started in retail.
We can't see you.
It says my camera's on.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Ignore the message. There you go.
Oh, turned it off, turned it back on again. Hopefully it's working now. Everyone can see me? Yes? Okay, great. My journey started in retail probably when I was like 16. I started working at The Gap and The Body Shop. I was the youngest store manager in Express history. I couldn't even operate the trash compactor because I wasn't 18 yet. So I moved to New York at 21 years old and started working at Restoration Hardware. Oddly, I got fired as the manager there the day Tom Felicia was filming the original Queer Eye in the store. That's a long story, but I think that's kind of a full circle funny moment, like a Julia Roberts. Big mistake, huge. And so I, excuse me, was in retail for years and years. And then I had the opportunity to start my own. The company I was working for went belly up one day. And I was like, well, crap, what am I going to do? And I had built their e-commerce division, so I quickly went online and I registered BobbyBerkHome.com, and I cloned their e-commerce division on BobbyBerkHome.com, and I thought, well, maybe I'll sell a sofa or two while I look for another job. And I ended up selling a few more than a couple. It started doing really, really well. And back then I was one of the first online retailers for furniture out there. My biggest hurdle was actually getting manufacturers and brands to sell to me because they just couldn't wrap their head around selling online. That's just crazy. Who would buy stuff online? But that did well. So then I started opening up brick and mortar stores. I opened up a store in Soho in New York, and then Miami and Atlanta and LA. And retail was a passion of mine, and it's definitely brought me to where I was, or to where I am now. Without me building my brand in retail, I would have never been able to have achieved what I achieved thus far.
Okay, wait, so I already have a question, and I know I'm not the one supposed to be asking questions, but Bobby, why was there a trash compactor at the Express store? I know everyone is just dying to know, and I need clarification on this.
How do you think you compact trash? It's the big dumpster at the mall that you put all the trash in, and it compacts the trash. Yeah, all the boxes. I don't think Antoni's worked retail before.
No, you are. You know what? You may
you've just been in hospitality before. Yeah.
That's a good segue into my retail history. My first job ever, I think I was 17, and it was actually at Roots, which is like this iconic Canadian brand of like sweat logos. I lasted about 3 months, and then I had 2 other retail jobs where I lasted less than 3 months, and I got fired at all 3. So, joke's on you. I do have retail experience. Was I good at it? No.
Hey, I think I as well got fired at almost every one that I was at. I was always destined to work for myself.
So the good news is life has changed a bit, though. Now, right, guys? You're not getting fired from the high street and town center retailers anymore. Do you want to tell us a little bit? I mean, aside from that, how life has changed a bit. I'm thinking there may be a few other things. Antoni, do you want to chat a little bit to us about it?
Sure, of course. I mean, now I'm just trying to not get fired from Netflix, which is a very different type of employer on a very different scale. But yeah, it definitely has changed. I do think that the amount of whereas I think the life that I had before Queer Eye, I felt like I had to be more proactive and creative in trying to figure out what kind of work to have. Whereas now it's really a blend of proactive and reactive, from speaking engagements to brand partnerships, endorsements, investing, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of incoming that comes in. So I'm sort of like in a position where I find myself kind of like editing and trying to like map out and strategize what the next year, what the next 5 years look like. So it's definitely been like a fundamental shift in how I approach work and trying to view myself as a business.
That's really, really insightful, and I suspect that resonates enormously with our audience of retailers and e-commerce professionals who are all in the same boat, and without a doubt have been doing that a little faster in the last year than perhaps they might have wanted to. But let's lighten things up a little bit. You probably get asked this loads, but I know this is going to be top of mind for everybody here. I would love to hear from each of you over the last 5 seasons. If you're going to pick your funniest story or pick your funniest moment, what would it be?
For me, and Antoni and I were talking about this last night, we're like, all of our funniest moments are usually things that have happened to our brothers that we probably just can't say. We have to let them tell their own stories. But
you know what?
What comes to mind for me was the trailer that you just showed, where Pastor Noah, the priest who had came out. If you'd seen past seasons, you've known that when it comes to churches, I'm not really comfortable with that, and I didn't really want to walk into churches. So for this episode, I was like, all right, I'm okay with it. I've grown. So I showed up in kind of like a gold Mylar jumpsuit to be funny that, oh, if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in a fireproof suit in case, I spontaneously combust. Joke was on me, though, because it was about 108 degrees in Philly that day. And when we got to the church, I realized it didn't have air conditioning. So I did spontaneously combust. And I lost about 5 pounds that day in water weight. It was great.
Bobby doesn't do very well in heat. He loves a climate-controlled situation. Yes. I'll share mine. Actually, this is one that I don't think I've shared publicly. So season 1 or 2, it was a while ago, we had a lovely hero. His name was Will Mankin, and he wanted to propose to his girlfriend. And so we're sitting in the car, and I'm not, because of like my pretty severe ADHD, like doing 2 things at once is just not really like in my mental operating system. And so I was reading the dossier, which is kind of like our file on the hero that we're helping. And I had one task. We were meant to FaceTime his girlfriend, and we were supposed to ask her questions about her boyfriend because we were going to go surprise him. And the only thing I wasn't supposed to do was bring up this secret engagement. And of course, lo and behold, I read the dossier. I did it so well. It's like the elephant in the room. And then, of course, I had to ask. I was like, so how are you feeling about the engagement? As I'm sitting in the passenger seat in the front. And then my face froze because I realized what I'd done. And so I slowly start sinking down in my seat, and I lift the iPad, and Tan, who's sitting behind me, had to like take over because I completely froze, became paralyzed. Thank goodness for really crappy Wi-Fi in the car. The screen froze at the exact same time, and she never heard me say it, unless she's just been really polite over the years, and she did hear it, but she was just being a good sport. I wanted to jump out of that moving car at that very moment.
It's now the rule that if something needs to be kept a secret, we just don't tell Antoni.
And my castmates make sure to remind me on a weekly basis. As soon as that story tries to leave my brain, they let me know. So yeah, when there's a secret, I just can't be trusted.
So we've all learned, don't tell Antoni anything you don't want everybody else to know immediately, instantaneously, preferably, specifically the person to whom it's directed. Exactly. And Bobby doesn't do heat in churches, particularly combined. And I'm still trying to work through that one, but I'll come back to that. I'm sure it tells me something else as well.
Yeah, that's a session for our therapist, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking so too. Yeah. Maybe I'll leave that one to you, shall I? So a lot of our audience, as you guys know, is from the retail and e-commerce business, right? You've worked with some incredibly inspiring people. I know those of us who have watched the show, we get very excited about that. And a lot of what you talk about is lessons learned in the show and who you learn from. I'd love it if there's anything that has happened over the last couple of seasons that you've experienced that you think really could be applied to kind of the retail e-commerce world, and how you might suggest some of our audience think about it and as kind of a takeaway.
For me, as you know, I've built my brand in e-commerce first and then in brick or mortar retail. And I think one of the keys to the success of my brand is that it had a story. It had a story behind it. It had something that people could relate to. And that was me as a person. And it doesn't always have to be a story about a person, but it needs to be a story. And if you think about the businesses that we've worked with on Queer Eye, and if you look at their massive success now, it's because people relate to their story. And I think one of the most important things that you can do in e-commerce and brick and mortar right now is have a story that your customers can relate to, have a story that your customers are drawn to, because there's so much competition out in the world right now. And people can, at a click of a button, have any product in the world that they want. So yours has to stand out. Yours needs to have an emotional connection to that consumer. And so I think one of the things that has just been reinforced to me the most while working on Queer Eye is consumers connect to brands that have a story and that are doing good in the world. So the more that you can tell a great story, and you know, this is retail, this is marketing, they don't always have to be, I was going to say, they don't always have to be true, but it's true, you know, they don't always have to be true. It can be a story a beautiful story that you want people to connect with. You know, it's not a malicious lying story. We're all writers, we're all creative people. Things need to have stories, brands need to have stories. And I think that's one of the keys to the successes right now in the brands that I'm seeing be most successful.
And I want to piggyback on what Bobby's saying, because I know this isn't necessarily my field of expertise, but again, just learning from Queer Eye. I was literally about to bring up an episode that we filmed this season that we're not allowed to talk about, but I just stopped myself. So if that's not growth, I don't know what is. But I think someone for anybody who's seen the show, and if you haven't, check it out. The Jones sisters in Kansas City who had this barbecue sauce. And then we had this a lovely young woman in Philadelphia named Rayana who ran a mobile dog grooming business called Stylish Pooch. And with them, there was specificity to kind of why they do what they do and why they're passionate about it. And I think that's what people related to on a human level. When there is that kind of personal story and people can relate to it, I think that's what kind of like brings us in, or at least makes me attracted to a certain brand or a certain someone. When there's a reason there, you know, when they have that sense of meaning or purpose, I think that's inspiring to other people. So that always helps for me.
I think you both touched on things that definitely resonate with me as a marketeer. So, and absolutely, it's about storytelling and authenticity and that human touch. I think are super important, and they're so interesting. Those are things that we talk about a lot, certainly with my team, and when we're thinking about how we're going out to market. So yeah, I think that really touches a chord with me, and I suspect it will with the rest of us. So thank you. Bobby, you have an unusual blending of roles now. You're a retailer, as you've said, and a TV presenter. Can you tell us a little bit about that balance and how you do or do not blend those two in your current life?
It's been hard. You know, Antoni will attest to this. When we're here filming, our lives are engulfed with this, as we all saw this morning with a quick change from Pan thinking he had the morning off and then last minute not. So when we're here, our lives are really engulfed in that. So the key to me being able to continue to run my businesses like I do is I've found an amazing team. You know, having the right team is so important when you're juggling multiple things in life. And the biggest thing about having a good team is taking care of those people. You know, I found the companies that are the most successful recently are companies that are really people first. You know, I had the amazing opportunity to go to Target's Fall National Convention a couple years ago. And I get cold chills thinking about it. Like that's like my drug, like listening to like successful retail CEOs. Like I was just like, I might as well have been at a Beyonce concert when I was at Target's Fall National, because it was just like, oh my God, yes, Rick Gomez! But to listen to them talk about how they've changed the culture of their company by focusing on their employees and making their employees happy. And in turn, their employees are happier and their employees are enjoying being at work. And thus their customers are having a better experience. And their customers are spending more because they're coming back over and over. One of the things that Target has done is, instead of just, you know, assigning a person on their schedule to, okay, you're in cosmetics and you're in housewares today, they're putting people that are passionate about those departments in there, and they're allowing those people to own those departments and be responsible for those departments. And thus they feel more valued. So to go back to the original question, how am I doing it? I'm doing it because I have an amazing team, and I make sure that those people feel valued. Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I agree. That's always the best approach. And the better the team. I always feel my team makes it. If I look good, it's because my team makes me look good. It's got very little to do with me.
Same.
Cool. So Antoni, let me flip to you. So there's been lots happening. We've kind of been looking backwards a lot and talking about things that have happened. I know there's some exciting things coming up for you. Maybe you'd like to share, and what's next in your journey. And as the world is starting to open up, what are you anticipating?
I definitely feel like it's starting to open up. After a year that was very different, but no, I'm excited. I have a second cookbook that's coming out called Let's Do Dinner, which is going to be published September 15th, I believe. And even with that, we're kind of figuring it out, shifting day by day. I went on tour across the US and the UK for Antoni in the Kitchen about a year and a half ago. And then with this, we were expecting to go fully virtual, but now sort of as the world opens up, I do really want to target some secondary markets and cities that I wasn't necessarily able to visit the first go around. And now we're kind of like finding a balance where I remember like 3 days leading up to the book coming out, it was just studio visit after studio visit for like 10 to 12 hours. And I was like a shell of a human by the end of it. And now some people are requesting that, and it's always nice to go in and do a demo, and then other places are doing it virtually. So we're kind of finding like this mix. Now that we're in this Zoom culture, I do think that people are striving for that face-to-face interaction, but at the same time, we're seeing that it's not necessary to be everywhere and literally be on a plane twice a day just to try to get to the next destination. So kind of adapting to that has been a lot of fun. And then did not turn off my notifications, so it got loud, apologies. And then I'm really excited about, there's a rom-com that I'm developing with Kenya Barris, the creator of Blackish for Netflix, about fluidity that we actually just finished our script on, and we're starting hopefully pre-production soon. So, and a couple of other things bubbling as well, but I don't like to jinx them until they're like official pen on paper signed. So, but more will come in the next coming months. But really excited to just be here in Austin. It's been a year away from, the other 4, and it's been so nice to be back. We never got to finish what we started here because the pandemic hit right as we were one day shy of wrapping our first episode. And it's just been it's been so lovely to be back. Very different, but definitely very fulfilling, and excited to show the world what the heroes that Austin has to offer.
That sounds amazing, and I know everybody's waiting to see it. And I think there's a lot of great things in there, and I'm excited for you. You sound like you have an amazing path ahead of you, so that sounds like a great journey to be on. But I do want to come back. You touched on that balance, and then we kind of whatever the new world is going to be, that balance of digital and face-to-face, and how are we all going to manage it? I think that's for all of us. It's not just, it's with whatever we do, and whether it's our personal or professional interactions, I think we're all going to be trying to find that right balance. And while I must admit, I'd quite like to get on a plane at some point again, I'm ready. I'm with you, and you don't need to do it so many times during the week for business, perhaps as much as we did.
Right. Totally. I think it's finding that balance. There's a lot, as difficult as the past year was, at least, I can only speak for myself, but I also, my whole system of values and what's important to me, and the actual value of time, I think, has been my biggest learning lesson over the past year. And that's something that I definitely don't want to forget moving forward in terms of prioritizing my own well-being and my mental health, and the work that I do, and not spreading myself too thin, because at one point, if you're doing too much, then it's like you're not really taking care of yourself, and you start to neglect yourself, and then you end up on Queer Eye.
So could be something to be desired, depending on how our audience feels. I can think of worse places to end up. So, as a kind of I'm conscious we're coming to the end, towards the end of our time, and I know you guys probably have people standing outside your door to drag you back on set. So let me wrap up with a question I'd love to put to both of you, if you could. And Antoni, actually, you teed it up beautifully, so thank you for that. We're coming, hopefully, out of this pandemic and back into a different world. what attitude, how would you advise people to approach it? What kind of attitude would you guys suggest that people take to life? And I think that applies both in the workplace and outside of it. This is very close to what you do kind of all day, every day on Queer Eye.
You know, I think for me, it's just taking life by the horns. You know, I think if anything, this last year has taught us that you never know what's going to happen. So never pass up those opportunities. Take life by the horns. You know, what is it that Jonathan always says, Antoni? You miss 100% of the chances you don't take. So take those chances. You know, don't second guess yourself and go for it.
I think that was Michael Jordan. I might be wrong, but
I prefer to think it was Jonathan Van Ness. I don't know. I prefer to think it was Jonathan.
I think for me, it's just kind of, you know, continuing on what I was saying before is in an opportunity like this privilege that I have of having all of these like work opportunities to kind of stay busy. I attached a lot of value to that. And as incredibly important as that is, my own well-being, the time that I spend with my dog on walks, the meals I have with my partner, the time that I spend with friends as I get to see them now as it's becoming safer to do. Like, those are things that are really important to me that in many ways I neglected over the past few years. Sometimes, you know, it was necessary and it was kind of part of, you know, being launched into this career. But, you know, as the world kind of like comes back, it's like I want to remember the things that really matter and the things that bring me joy. And in many instances, that's work and business opportunities. But at the same time, it's also taking care of myself and making sure that everything is just like a full circle and it's not just like certain specific, you know, slices of the pie.
Well, I think that's great advice to follow from both of you. Thank you. And I think certainly I'll be taking it to heart, and I suspect a lot of people sitting out here will be as well. And I think echoes the conversations that so many of us have had. And hopefully we're going to go into a different kind of world with some perhaps more rebalanced priorities, and that will be good for everybody. But I can definitely say that it has been fantastic having both of you. I cannot tell you what a pleasure it's been. I hope everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have. Cool. I've had the privilege of chatting with you, but I can't thank you enough. It's been inspiring and fun. And I definitely have a few one-liners to use at cocktail parties, so thank you both, and I'm sure others do as well.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks, guys. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next season of Queer Eye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye, Antoni. Well, that was a great way to start a day, huh? Genuinely, as I said to the guys, I really hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was a lot of fun. And I think they really have kicked things off to a great way and certainly given me a lot to think about, both professionally and personally, as well as those few one-liners for the cocktail parties. And I hope everybody's had the same. But we have a lot more to do and a lot more great content and some other fabulous speakers that are waiting in the wings. So while Bobby and Antoni are a tough act to follow, I'm 100% sure our next session will be up to it. I'm about to hand over to Courtney Lovell of Emarsys to host a distinguished panel. And together, they're going to start to explore what it truly means to know your customer. If you haven't had the privilege of meeting Courtney, you should know she's spent the last 15 years helping marketers engage more effectively with their customers. And we've been privileged to have Courtney as a key member of Emarsys for the last 6 years. This is going to be a fascinating discussion, so I don't want to waste any more time. And without further ado, I am delighted to welcome Courtney to the festival main stage. Courtney, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Really appreciate the introduction. And wow, what a great way to kick off the day. I too took away so many wonderful, inspirational thoughts. And it's so interesting to me how it is all interwoven in everything that we all do every single day around putting people first, have a story that everyone can relate to, and be able to tell something that inspires somebody to come back and engage. And so that was a perfect segue into the conversation that we're going to have now with a wonderful group of marketers that I can't wait to get started with. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to the panel that we have going today. We have the wonderful Anna Sierra, I think I said that right, from the Joy Shop. We have Rick Almeida from PUMA, who's joining us, and then my friend and colleague, Ben Norton. But before we get started with the questions, Anna, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and the Joy Shop, and then we'll get going.
Absolutely, of course. So I'm Anna. Ullman Cersei is actually my name, but it's okay. It's hard to pronounce. And I spent a large part of my career trying to help in consulting, trying to help retailers to become more customer focused, working for Accenture. And then about 5 years ago, I switched to the retailer side and worked a couple of years for a pure online player. I've been the CEO of Nelly.com. Who is one of the largest fashion retailers online in the Nordics. And they are really pioneers when it comes to digital marketing. They are really, really strong at that. And now I'm putting my full focus on, as both one of the owners and also the CEO of the Swedish fashion brand Joy that we have restarted. But since we are sort of a startup, it's very little CEO and much more like a creative director or web administration or customer insights or things like that, depending on what's on the table for the day. So that's a little bit about me. Absolutely. You want me to say a few words about Joy, or do I come back to that later? Or
yeah, we'll come back to it. We'll give Rick and Ben a quick chat, but you're certainly wearing a lot of hats on a daily basis, Anna, and we can't wait to kind of unpack that a little bit. But before we do, Rick, would you mind sharing a little bit about you and your journey in footwear and Clarks and Stride and all of that?
Yeah, sure. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening. So Rick Almeida, I look after e-commerce for PUMA North America. And PUMA is one of the world's leading sports brands with a tremendous history for not only fast designs, but product design for the fastest athletes. And we're not only designing and developing, but we're really delivering innovative product to the marketplace. A little bit just about myself. I feel like the last speakers, a teenager, I was selling shoes on the sales floor, had the opportunity to join the corporate world after college. And I had the opportunity throughout my career to launch and be a part of first iterations of .com. First at Stride, children's shoes, then kind of, I guess, grew up, went to Clarks and was able to launch their first website in operation with a tremendous team. Somewhere around 10 years ago, and then got the opportunity to join PUMA, and been doing that for just over now 2 years with another amazing group, and continuing to drive digital innovation and growth. It is truly a passion.
Thanks, Rick. I love how we all have this interwoven piece back to retail as like a first job, because I had to laugh when Bobby was talking. I remember working at Banana Republic back in the day, and I too started before you could operate the packing machine to go put all the boxes away. So I was like, yes, this is all tying together nicely. But we'll get going a little bit deeper in just a second, Rick. Last and certainly not least, I'm joined by Ben. Ben, would you mind saying a couple words before we get started?
Yeah. Hey, Courtney. Hello, everybody. I feel like a bit of an imposter on this panel, actually. We've got two fantastic customers, and then we've got the plant that is the sort of head of consulting type plant. Look, I started in retail. Everyone did. Actually, I don't think Rick knows this either. I was a fishmonger at Tesco's at the very beginning. I used to have to wash a lot before I went out afterwards. I remember that. But now I'm hugely privileged to sit across the top of a global team, and that global team looks after some of our biggest customers, including PUMA, and helps them to build the strategies that they need to build in order to get towards personalization, in order to get the best out of our platforms. So I've had such an amazing time at Emarsys. I was somewhere else familiar before that. Courtney, and I've been in this space for 6 years marketing automation, as long as it's been a thing. So it's a privilege to be here. It's been so interesting to watch all of the brands that I've been consulting to for years finally listen to our advice when Corona hit, which is a very selfish statement to make, I realise. But now they're suddenly all accelerating through their roadmaps that we gave them years ago. So it's mixed feelings for me on that. But yeah, look, it's great to be here.
Thanks so much. Well, we'll jump right in, because haven't the last 18 months been quite a ride for all of us? I think if you roll back even 19 months, none of us thought we would probably be in the spot we were. But it's brought a lot of opportunity through the challenge that I think we want to really focus on today and kind of pick out opportunities in. And Rick, if you don't mind, I think I'll maybe start with you, put you in the hot seat. I was reading an article last week from Adam Petrick, your global director of brand, and he was talking about how PUMA needed to adjust to the new digital reality at the onset of the pandemic. And so with your focus in e-commerce, can you talk to us a little bit about the mind shift that you had when stores shut down and selling a product that traditionally consumers kind of want to go in and feel and touch and try on, and how you were taking all of that into your thoughts as you launched into, last March and into where we are today?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think for just about everyone, it was the pandemic was a catalyst for change, and particularly with that in terms of putting the focus on digital efforts, because that was really our means to continue to engage and build, maintain that relationship with consumers. So, PUMA traditionally has been wholesale first and has been great at sell-in. But the sell-through is where we had a real opportunity to pivot, as Adam mentioned. And, it was overwhelming to see the amount of support we got when everything started to change and we were all locked in our homes, and to see the organization rally and pivot from everything from our marketing and our creative storytelling and our on-site merchandising. The teams had to pivot in a number of different ways to not only change the way that we were going to market, but also the ways, like I mentioned earlier, that we had engaged with consumers. We had live events that were happening that were not originally planned with our ambassadors on Instagram, and the ways in which we were going to market changed. I mean, fortunately, our product was one that was very relatable and in some cases needed during that time, or where consumers were doing more solo activities. We really leaned into that. So it really enabled us to capitalize on our great product. It was just the way in which we created that relevancy changed a bit. And I think overall what we saw was just this tremendous acceleration across our portfolio, and really moved the revenue needle up by about at least 2 years in terms of thinking how quickly we penetrated more e-commerce sales as part of our regional business, but really globally as well.
Agility was so key, right? And I know when we think about PUMA and the shoe, if you will, I know there's much more than that, but just thinking about that, it really did bring something to the stay-at-home culture that we had to have. It invited you to go outside. It invited you to go take a walk. And I think it's so interesting how just watching the brand, and, obviously we were partners, so I could kind of look at it from that angle, but telling that story and giving people something they could relate to beyond just selling a product. And I think that really was part of the ongoing journey. And just to kind of further what we were talking about, how was that part of your thinking when you were rolling out even the communication strategy?
Yeah, and I think it was very important to be very mindful to our messaging, and to ensure that we were complementary but not intrusive in terms of what was going on, and being sensitive to everything that was going on around us. I mean, we had to be very, very cautious of our tone and messaging, but also be one that was a part of the consumer's life, right? Or how we saw ourselves fit in, and very much complementary to the things that they were doing, or that they wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I know, Anna, you have a little bit different of a perspective. Obviously, PUMA's been a longstanding brand, and Rick's been part of that journey. And then you have the new opportunity, right, with Joy, and kind of your perspective on that. talk to us a little bit about what kind of opportunities you see to continue to engage consumers as the world is opening a bit back up. And I know you've got retail stores as well as the e-commerce. So how are you thinking about, Anna, the ongoing relationship with your customer as we continue to open the world back up?
Yeah, I can start to give a short background about Joy, but it's to put it in perspective so you understand what we are facing right now. So Joy is a Swedish fashion brand that was founded 50 years ago, but it was bankrupt in March 2020. A little bit too early to blame COVID. So I would say that it was more due to too many unprofitable stores and also too high running costs. So my co-founders, they had actually done a consulting work for Joy and saw that a very interesting things in that brand, both the brand, but also that they have very strong core of very loyal and very engaged customers. That was a little bit older, so it's sort of from my age and up. And they also had private label brands that was really loved because they have a good fit for women that is not 25 years old. But they still had, and they had opportunity to actually, when they talked to the customer, because they had this customer engagement consulting work, and they saw that they were quite good at taking care of the customer who knew what they wanted. But for the customers that didn't know what they wanted, they didn't provide a good customer experience. So what we thought was, what about if we take the brand and we take the customers, the loyalty customers and the products, and then we create a new type of customer experience, a new operating model, and restart the company from scratch. So we are a startup, but with an old brand. And the key thing that we really wanted to do different here is the thing that if you know what you want and shop online, because we will be 100% online business, if you know what you want and you shop online, it's quite easy. And it's also quite easy for retailers to target those customers. It's easy to buy AdWords for sneakers, for example, and especially if it's a special model that the customer knows. But if you don't know what sneaker to buy, or you don't know what trousers to buy, it actually not so many retailers, online retailers, that it's good to take care of those customers. So in store, you have the store personnel that help you. But so the thing that we wanted to do differently, besides the whole operating model and things like that for this, was to take care of the customer that doesn't really know what you want to buy. So if you want a new a pair of black trousers and you get a product catalog with like 400 black trousers, it's not very easy. So that's where we wanted to do something differently. And when it comes to COVID-19, for us, I mean, the brand died a year ago, and then those customers haven't bought anything for a year almost. And now when we open up again, they, first of all, since they are a little bit older, most of them got their vaccine, most of them will go out and do some social events now. So now suddenly they really feel that they want to shop. So for us, it's actually COVID-19 was actually quite good than opportunity for us to restart this brand.
Well, I think you talked a little bit before, Anna, about how the brand had so much loyalty, and really now it's amazing how even having a pause in messaging and communication with the customer, you're able to come back in and re-excite the customer and her journey with Joy. And would you talk just a little bit about how you're thinking about continuing that loyalty sentiment far into the future?
Yeah, it was, I mean, actually the Emarsys team was a little bit worried since we haven't contacted the customers for a year when we were starting to do the ramp up. And I think all of them were a little bit surprised because the first email we sent to the very most loyal customers and the open rate was 78% and click-through rate was 86%. I mean, that's quite high results from not reaching out to those customers. And we still see that we get a very high open rate on our emails. We still are around 50%, which is very good results. And this is 1 month later. So what we are planning to do is to try to make this as personal and also as customer focused, to really look what was the thing that the customer was engaged in and what are the things that we are really interested in, and to make sure that we're really handling this. So we are actually, for those customers that doesn't really know what to buy when it comes to clothes, we have this test you can do, and then we will plan to personalize the communication with those customers based on this. So I think this is, it's quite, when you talk about personalization, it is, of course, it's very, you want to get the customer engaged, but it's actually quite easy to become internal focused when you set up the personalization, because you think about your own KPIs, you want to drive sales, and then you sort of get the internal perspective in how you're setting up the personalization. So I think that is a key for us to really try to see what is the need of the customers and continue to just listen to the customers and try to pick up what's the thing that they engage in most. And we also saw, for example, that when we didn't, before we opened, we asked in the social media, because we had social media accounts also as part of the acquisition. We asked them about what pattern do you like the most, and they get to vote. And then we decided to take those the pattern that was the most engagement round. So there are things to do that really creates engagements that I think is really interesting. But I think it's a key thing that not become too internal in the way you set up the personalization, so you don't forget to listen to the customers and what is the largest engagement and what do they really like engage with.
Absolutely. I often think and reflect that personalization is really flipping the mindset around, where I think maybe traditional marketing back in the day was, I have a product, who wants to buy it, and just sending it out, to this, I have a customer, what does she need? What can make her life better, right? And that mindset switch is where personalization can be born within organizations. And Ben, when we had the luxury of traveling around and going to meet with customers, this was a pivotal discussion point that you and I often were talking about, really this personalization shift, and what does that mean to customer experience. So maybe take us a little bit on a journey on your thoughts around how brands are kind of really embodying what personalization means, but to the consumer and how she or he may feel it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that have been said in the sessions, both this right at the start, and Anna and Rick have both said. I mean, I think that one of the things that always strikes me when we get customers all together in a room, which we do quite frequently, is that Anna was talking about this, is that we often don't trouble a customer to an actual customer to ask them what they want, to ask them what they're doing. We're all theorizing about what's the best place in the life cycle to attack this segment, and how are we going to maximize revenue at this point. And the other thing we kind of forget is, and this is always, of course, you remember this, we sit and talk about the consumer like we're not one for the purpose of that 8-hour day, that we've never thought about what it is to actually buy stuff, what it is to actually want to return it, what it is to have it delivered to us on time, what it is to not be spammed in our inbox, all these commonsensical things, which we will talk about as soon as our working day finishes. And yet when you are trying to build a sort of digital retention strategy, or God forbid, actually build a loyalty program, we are sort of grasping around like, what is it? What makes this work? And I think the key for me for personalization is not to go after the really inspirational, but very hard to do use cases of following a customer across multiple channels as she drinks her frappuccino in a beachside coffee bar and gets a notification. It's actually about, are you doing the basics first? Have you earned the right to be able to really go and target that highly engaged segment at the top? And I think a lot of the time, what I find is that customers go top down and miss a lot. They miss a lot. Whereas if they just get that groundwork in, if they start to think about, well, we need to welcome them, we need to say thank you for buying something, and we need to give them a little nudge if they haven't bought something for a while and ask them why. And then you can start to do this really high level personalization. When you get there, that for me is a simple one. It's what Anna said. It's the most engaged segment. Go and ask them. That's what loyalty is. Go and ask them because they want to interact with you. If you've got a brand rather than just a shop, then they will want to talk, and you'll learn more about what do they actually want.
No, absolutely. And spot on. We often would laugh because we talk about the customer experience as this big fluffy thing, and we want to map it out on all these whiteboards. And then we'll ask simple questions, right? Like, well, have you bought from that? Did you buy from that category recently? Right? And then, oh, well, let's think about that again. And I think we all have this great intention and desire to want to personalize. There are a million reasons that get in our way of actually executing it and driving it.
Yeah, but look, it's hard, right? It's hard to do, but we know the end game. 40%. It's better. It just works. But it's hard to get it done. So you've got to prioritize properly. We know this, right? We know it's not a glamorous message. It's not a glamorous message.
Rolling up your sleeves and actually taking ideas into execution is tough. And Rick, I kind of will circle back around to you, because I think we could all sit around and theoretically talk about this surprise and delight experience we want to give him and her as they're engaging with PUMA or any brand. But how do you think about actually taking it from philosophy, if you will, to execution, and what are some things that you put into practice in actually making this stuff come to life?
Yeah, I think, Ben hit it on, you've got to nail the basics first, all right? Or make sure that you've created that life cycle or engagement model where, relative to where the consumer is in their journey, how are you setting up ways to communicate and reach out to them in a very relevant way? So that, because we talk about it here, it's not just a transaction, right? Like the engagement really leads to a relationship. So I think it's not only just being personal and relevant, both offsite or on-site, and really being mindful as to what are the cues or ways in which we can inject a little bit more of that personalization, whether that's through product recommendations or starting to send signals based on their location and starting to tailor that experience, or it's behavioral. I think the team's done a great job. One of the ones that we've also focused on, not just during that journey to purchase, but post-purchase, right? I mean, we've got an array of a catalog that is very complementary to each other, right? So we can really outfit our consumers. So whether they've bought an entire outfit or they've just bought one thing, we can extend that journey and say, hey, it's time to come back, and here's a great wardrobe for you to complement your last purchase or some of the items that you've transacted with us on. And that is a way for us to extend that relationship. Then the next question is, well, how do we take that offsite, right? How do we continue to reach those consumers, not just through email, but in the channels in which that they want to engage with the brands or they're spending their time? How do we really make those experiences equally as relevant to bring them back? So look, it's not easy, and you've got a lot of data that you need to also consolidate and break down silos to enable some of these. But it really is about acceleration from a fail fast and learn approach. That's at least the way that we should look at it, right? Whether if it's explicit or implicitly trying to determine ways that you can engage with consumers, but build that relationship out, learn from it, and continue just to iterate and optimize what you have and not just set and forget it too. I think that's an important piece of it. You don't just put a welcome series together, as Ben mentioned, but you've got to optimize that, right? Based on the consumers, where do they come from? So it is really thinking contextually as well about that user's journey and how do you really maximize that relationship.
Well, I mean, going back to what you and I were even first talking about, Rick, around agility, that was more of the conversation that I had in the last 18 months than I probably did in the last 5 years of my career, because you couldn't set it and forget it anymore. Month to month, week to week, inventory was changing, supply and demand, the thoughts, the environment we were all living was changing so quickly. And without this idea of having to say, I will be willing to rethink anything that I may have thought was truth before, for the consumer, because I want to give her that best experience, was really so critical. And I think, Anna, when we were talking just in getting ready for this session, you were talking a little bit about this earlier as well, but explain a bit more around how you're really thinking about her over the next many years and how your interaction with her at the very beginning was kind of laying that framework for you to go forward and continue to build this brand back up to where you know it will be?
I'm not 100% sure if I understood the question, but I think one thing that we've been discussing now, like breaking the silos here, it's a really key thing here for this. So if you really want to build a brand that is really customer focused, because I've been seeing so many retailers that think they are customer focused, but they are not. They are not building their whole operating model or organization and things around the customers. And if you don't have the assortment lined up for the personalization you plan to do, if you don't have the content lined up for personalization you want to do, then you won't be able to deliver that full customer journey that you want. So I think for us now, we actually put a lot of energy in setting up the processes and the structure and the IT systems that makes it possible for us to be customer focused. So I've been quite, I think, a big pain for the purchasing department, because I'm really forcing them into those are the customer segments, those are the styles we plan to personalize around. You need to make sure they have the assortment for all of them, because otherwise some of them are more important and you need to put more energy into that, but you need to have this. We need to fill all of those needs. And also when we're planning to set up the content, then also plan, okay, now we plan to create content so we can create different content and different journeys for different customers. So it can become more relevant. So I think the whole and continue asking the customers. I really think I've been working the last week. We had some graduations and things and family actions for people. So I ended up sitting in customer service and for several days. And it's so good. It's so good to sit there and listen to them and to make sure that you're actually delivering the customer journey that you want. So I think it is a key that you really build up a structure that is not internal driven, that you have processes, you have systems. So when we did the system selection, it was very important for us that we have a single view of the customer, that we have an e-commerce platform that make it possible to easily create a lot of different customer journeys. So it's not a hassle for us. So I think for me, that's a key, that you actually set up the organization, because I know it's not that the retailer doesn't want to become customer focused and being more personalized. It's more that they have this structure and it costs them a lot of change to be able. And that's the good thing with COVID now, because many people just forced to change. When you have a good example here for hearing about PUMA, but I know so many more examples of retailers that just forced to change. I was actually supporting another retailer during the last year, and we forced to do it differently. We forced to completely change the whole campaign structure, the whole logistics when it comes to e-commerce, fulfillment and things like that. I think that is a good thing when you're forced to change. Then they have to change. Otherwise, they don't have to change.
Exactly. We all had to change, right? And I think, Anna, it's so inspiring to hear you just talk, though, about this unrelentless focus to know all aspects of the business. And I love that you got on and got with customer service and listened to those calls. They're insightful. They will change the way you think of things, right? And I know we're coming to the end of the time, and I could talk to you, Anna, and Rick, and Ben for hours about this. But I think let's kind of wrap up, I guess, and maybe, Ben, you can get us started, and then we'll go through the line. But what is something, when you think about the evolution of the customer coming back into commerce, kind of around our theme, that you're most excited about that's coming down for the next, let's call it 12 or so months? Ben, why don't you go first?
Thanks, Courts. It's a couple of things. First is I've been looking for online retailers for a long time to actually merchandise online like stores do. So stores are amazing at putting the mannequin in the window, and then they're not always great at telling you what she's wearing. And I think when you see online, Anna was talking earlier about the consumer that doesn't know what they want. I'm seeing more and more online premises that are doing that are showing me a look and then sending me to the item. The other thing, which is massive if you're in Europe, where we got a ship wedged across the Suez Canal, is the connection to inventory at the back end. So I've had experience. I'm a motorcyclist. I tried to buy a ton of Italian, which seems to be where it's made, all of the motorcycle gear, and it's out of stock, but still on the site. So that inventory connection and that merchandising thing, those are my two.
Well, I think we've got some time in a little bit where you and I will unpack that a bit deeper, because I know it's a sweet spot for both of us to talk through. But until then, Rick, why don't you go next? What are something you're most excited about seeing as we continue emerging and opening back up?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just that continuation of our journey in terms of, I guess the transformation and the teams rallying behind a continued focus on change, right? Not just for the sake of it, but we've been forced to, right, in a way. But the maturation that we've gone through is we're leaning into it, and we're trying to squeeze as much as we can out of the tools we have. And then it's like, okay, well, what's next, right? Or how else can we continue to leverage our partnerships? But the evolution of our journey is no longer just the one and done purchase, right? It's a relationship, and that's what's going to create loyalty as well. So the projects that we've got going on, and a lot of the focus internally that we have beyond just how do we continue to be great at sell-through is how do we continue to carry on a relationship with our users, and really just the teams cross-functionally rallying behind that to continue to optimize those journeys and find new ways to attract and retain consumers. That for me is really exciting.
Absolutely. It's not just good enough to get that one purchase now, but how do we continue with him and her for years to come? And so that's kind of the exciting and challenging task in front of all of us. Well, Rick, Anna, Ben, thank you so much. What a fun time. I'm certainly honored to be able to have this chat with you and look forward to more of them in the future. But I think we are running out of our time. So without further ado, I will pass it back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Courtney and Ben, Rick, Anna. It really was a fascinating discussion and really enjoyed it. And I think the way you're putting your customers at the center of everything you do and the way you think, I think that really resonated with me, and I think it will have resonated with our audience as well. And I think it's great. There were a number of tips in there that I think we can all take away and use back in our day-to-day lives to actually get to know our customers better. So thank you so much for joining. Really appreciated it. But now it's time to switch gears again a little bit. So we started the day with celebrities Bobby Berk and Antoni Porowski from Queer Eye. But I'm about to be joined what I would call a celebrity brand. Daniel and Melanie Marsden are the amazing husband and wife co-founders of Lounge Underwear, which is one of the fastest growing e-commerce brands in Europe. They started the company just 5 years ago in their own lounge and have grown it to a 40 million plus direct-to-consumer, online-only business. They've recently been named to both the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Times Under 30 Rich list. They're going to join me to chat about the challenges associated with scaling the business, the importance of their female family community, and how the brand uses social media to create loyalty. And we'll chat about the plans they have for further enhancing customer engagement and growth in the coming months. But before they join us, let me introduce you further to this really exciting brand.
And now I'll rise above you.
Well, that video certainly gets me excited, and I hope it does for everyone else. So, without further ado, let's spend some time getting to know the founders of this incredible brand. Dan, Melanie, welcome to the festival.
Thank you very much for having us.
Hi, thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. I do love that video. I do. I've seen it too many times now, but I still think it's amazing. So thank you again for that. So
no,
you guys have just
Sorry.
You guys have just the most amazing journey in such a short time. So if you don't mind, can we turn the clock back a little bit? And start at the beginning and hear a little bit of the story of how Lounge started. I don't know, Dan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So essentially the company started slightly different, I think, to a lot of the business, well, the social born businesses that were started at the time. So this is going back like 6 years now. So it wasn't like a lot of the companies were founded so they couldn't find they couldn't find the product they were looking for, or there's something they were particularly passionate about. It wasn't quite the same with Lounge, because essentially we'd started up a bunch of businesses before we actually started Lounge, and essentially learned how to market a company through social media. So 6 years ago, this is when the likes of Instagram, obviously YouTube, were actually absolutely blowing up. You had eCommerce blowing up, and they were both, right at the pivotal point. So like I say, we knew how to essentially market brands through social media and essentially influence marketing. And there was loads of criteria that had to go into the actual product that we were going to pick for the company. So it had to be cheap to ship, brandable, so when people posted in it, they knew the company, big margins because we didn't have any money at the time, cheap to store. There was loads that went into it. It just so happened that actually underwear was the perfect product around that marketing strategy. And then we had £1,000 that we put in. We put £500 in each. Couldn't afford the minimum order quantities of China. So we essentially, the first triangle design that we actually designed, we had to source every single individual component of it, brought it all into the UK, cut out the actual patterns of the first triangle set ourselves, the first 100, sent it to a woman in Bulgaria who stitched those up for us, sent them back. And essentially our product was actually our marketing itself, because obviously we'd gift it to influencers, and in return for that, they'd give us exposure. Obviously the landscape's completely different now. So whereas now, you can easily spend thousands on social media. Back then, because it was very young, you could essentially use product as your payment. And essentially scaled from there. I mean, from day one, we knew it was a different ball game. I remember we were probably a couple of weeks in and we gifted a set to an Australian influencer, and we woke up in the morning, I think we had like 6 sales, but that was like over £200 at the time. We couldn't believe it. And essentially, just bootstrapped the company up until now, and we finished on 54 million last year, obviously COVID's been like a massive help to us, even though it's been a horrible situation. But yeah, just been a crazy journey.
Insane. I'm glad to hear about the woman in Bulgaria, though, because I all of a sudden had a vision of you, Dan, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the lounge, stitching away.
It was actually, for the first couple of sets, we got the material in, and it was literally a case of we had to chalk around the patterns for it and cut them out. So we spent hours and hours and hours just cutting round patterns.
That would terrify me. I can't cut a straight line to save my life. So from there, huge amount of change in a longer period of time, but then consolidated, as Dan, you touched on, COVID has had, fortunately for you guys, an incredibly positive impact on your business, which is fantastic. And if anything, your change has kind of gone. I mean, you were at hyperdrive anyway, but you kind of went to warp speed, I think, in the last 12 months. You know, you had a new baby amongst all this, and congratulations so much. I'm privileged to meet her briefly on our last call, and she's beautiful. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But add all of that to all the things. How in the world are you juggling it all? And how are you taking that coming out of lockdown? Mel, do you want to, you kind of talked about this actually a little bit the last time, so tell us a bit.
It's a good question. I mean, since we started Lounge, I guess it feels like we've been, you know, going at a crazy pace. And I think the introduction of our little girl Felicity, and as you mentioned, COVID has definitely threw a few spanners in the work. But it's just, I guess it's kind of almost built into our DNA that we love that pressure, if you know what I mean, of running a business in that kind of environment. Obviously with COVID, it literally overnight we had to just literally flick a switch and send everyone home. That was last March. I think that's when we actually found out that we were pregnant as well. So it was a lot to digest at once.
I think when we run the company as well, from the early days, and we say this to some of the seniors as well, in regards to our lifestyle anyway, is that we don't treat Lounge as a job. It is a lifestyle, because it literally is. It's always on 24/7, 365 days. Essentially, when you wake up, you're thinking about it. When you go to sleep, you think about it. But that's from an enjoyment point of view. But it literally is like it's a lifestyle, not really like a career or a job.
Yeah.
And does that connect directly into the kind of the culture that you're trying to set within the company itself, and kind of how you want people around you thinking about it as the brand is growing?
Yeah, the guys that obviously work here have a much better probably work-life balance than we do, because it is our baby. But we say to everyone that joins the company, it's like it's a modern company with that old school work ethic. So we don't go the full kind of Google, Facebook shebang where everything's a bit crazy and you can almost do what the hell you want. We still, like kind of like a structure, like I say, that kind of modern company. So you have essentially got free reign, but it is drilled in, especially like the young guys that come straight out of uni, haven't got that kind of office mentality, of just that old school work ethic. Nothing actually beats that old school work ethic.
And that video, the promotional video you played at the beginning, obviously showcased our new HQ that we've literally just moved into on Monday. Yeah.
Wow.
So, we've gone from, as you mentioned, literally my parents' living room. We've moved several times into different units across our journey. And we're now in, our kind of global HQ, as we call it. So we've pushed in some awesome benefits for the staff, and the building is built for inspiration, to drive innovation and for people to collaborate. But as Dan said, it does come back to that, everyone works so hard, as well as obviously having the best time of their life here. So it's a balance.
That's ideal, though. If you want to be having fun, right? You spend so much time in the office. If you're not having fun and laughing with your colleagues and enjoying it, I always think, what's the point, right? That's where you should be. That's what makes your day be a good day at the end of it.
100%.
100%. I think a lot of the guys as well, now we've moved into here, they class it as like their second home, because it's not like an office environment. It's essentially like a social, obviously combined with work. There's a brilliant balance, I think we got.
Sounds amazing. I might be tapping you up for a tour.
We can sort that out.
Excellent. So we've kind of been looking in you and the company and the people. Let's look externally a little bit, if we could, for a second, and talk a little about your customers. And I think, Mel, this is kind of a lot of where you live and breathe in terms of building that external community, the hashtag female family. I know that's really important to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And also, how are you treating your customers personally when everything's digital only? That's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from day one, I suppose our core really has been social media and essentially our Instagram platform. Obviously, that's scaled up as the business has, but we still push a huge amount of focus into the way we engage with our, as you said, female family through that platform. And that personalisation point has always been such a crucial a focus essentially for us as a brand. Literally, I used to spend, I mean, it has been handed to a different team now, but I love doing it and I hate handing it over. But I used to spend all evenings, all mornings when I was in the bath, literally just chatting to the customers in our DMs. They wouldn't know they were talking to me, obviously. They feel like they're talking to the brand. But I guess the point is that we like to give people that real human touch as if they're talking to a best mate. If someone, tags us in a story, there might be a lot of brands that literally just palm that off, but we make sure that we're literally talking and engaging with everybody that kind of shows interest in the brand. So yeah, that female family, although it is global, everyone, it's over the world. I think the point is to make everyone feel close, and especially in a time where, this past year, everyone's felt so distant and in their own homes. I think what our brand's been able to do is to kind of unite everyone, make sure they feel like they're kind of holding hands with the women around them through Wearing Lounge.
And I think it's really interesting that completely connects to something that Bobby Berk said at the beginning of the session, talking about brands telling a story and brands being human. I think you just encapsulated that exactly, and this is a great example of exactly what we're talking about. So it's quite nice things come full circle, and it does that, doesn't it?
100%.
So it's been a crazy 12 months. It's been a crazy couple of years before that, but I think, knowing you already as I do, your minds are probably already leapfrogging into the next 12 months. So do you want to give us a little sneak peek as to kind of what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about engaging your customers and how that connects to, growing your business even more? Because I'm sure that's on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yes. So like I said, we've had a kind of an unprecedented 5 years, especially the last 12 months. It's kind of been on rocket fuel. Then going into the next 12 months, I think it's going to be a really strange 12 months, especially for our company, who's we've essentially seen like 3 years worth of growth in 12 months. I think it's going to be a really strange 12 months, moving forward now, because we've got far extremes. So when we were going into lockdown compared to now coming out of lockdown, especially in the UK and Europe. So it's going to be an unusual one. It's going to be a tricky one to call, I think. But obviously, we're doing big pushes into sustainability, which our customers absolutely love. We've got a very young customer base who are very, conscious about what they're actually putting into the world and taking out of the world. So we're putting a big focus on that. We started last year by saying, let's get the kind of the fundamentals and the easy wins, I guess, in regards to our packaging. All that went to recycled and sustainable materials. And then we moved on to our product this year, where I think 90% of our product launches over the next 12 months are going to be made from recycled or sustainable materials. I think literally about 2 weeks ago, we went carbon neutral as a company, which was incredible. But yeah, we still see growth internationally. We're seeing crazy growth through Europe, like the likes of France and Germany at the moment, and the US. But essentially just building the brand and scaling as we do. But like I say, I think it's going to be an unusual year as we come out of lockdown.
I think it's just on top of that, what Dan mentioned about that crazy growth with experience means that we've seen a huge amount of new customers. So there's all these new faces that are kind of running around in this lounge world and trying to understand who we are and what we're about. So now it's about, really getting those brand intentions out to those people and making sure that over the next 12 months, they start to really feel a part of that community, and that they get a grip on what the brand is all about and how they can kind of get close within our community.
That's fascinating. Amazing things you've done in terms of sustainability and building that foundation of the company that I think that feels like something to take forward, right? That's an investment in the future for everybody and sending a really positive message. And yeah, I agree with both of you. I don't think any of us really know what to expect from this last year any more than we perhaps knew what to expect from the year that's come, right? Mm-hmm. But it will certainly be different and it will be exciting, and feels like you guys have some interesting ideas, and we'll be continuing to be creative and roll with the punches, which I think has probably been significantly contributed to your success in the last couple of years. You probably know this, but you are amazing examples to young men and women starting out certainly in marketing and e-commerce world, right? And I think listening to Dan in terms of how you thought about it, when we started, he talked about how you thought about the business and how you guys, that whole mental process you went through about how you were going to do it, how you wanted to think about it, how you wanted to go to market, and then what products actually would resonate with customers, and then the communications around that, I think shows that. So what advice would you give to someone if was coming to you and saying they wanted to start out and do something like what you did? What advice would you guys give them?
I think that the one that we say is most common is just genuine hard work. I think a lot of people obviously struggle to actually focus on something relentlessly for a long period of time. And the other half is actually just getting it started. Because it's not just about essentially the fun parts like creating a logo or something. It's about actually getting stuck in and essentially, building the business. But I think the other key is essentially just being persistent. Even if you're failing, just keep going, because a massive part, which isn't actually talked about that much, is timing within a business. We could have potentially started Lounge 12 months earlier or 12 months later, and it wouldn't have had the effect that it does now. Same with like all of Apple's products. It's all, timing is a massive one. Hence, you've got to keep going when you're failing, because sometimes it might have actually been a good idea, but the market just wasn't ready for it. It's essentially just keep failing until you make it.
Yeah, I think that.
So I was just going to say, also just having confidence, I suppose, in your own decisions, but also when you know that your business is at a point where you can, look to recruit people, getting good people around you and people that can do stuff that essentially you can't. Being confident in what you can do, but knowing that actually him and her can actually do those things for me even better than I ever can. I'd say try and make that step, as soon as you're able as a business.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There's two things there that I think really connect with me in terms of how I think about growing businesses and management. One, your point about mistakes, Dan. I sometimes have a mantra that, sometimes there's something you don't learn if you don't make a mistake. So make the mistake and learn from it, and then, but don't, to your point, don't just stop there. Pick yourself up and go do it again, but now with all this extra grain of knowledge, right, that you can do something creative and different that you might not have known. And then exactly that, Melia, we talked about earlier, funny enough, also Bobby earlier, was that, the team where he's the same answer, the team around him is what has made him successful. And I always think it's your team that makes you look good, and they do all these, I know my team does all these wonderful things that I am not as good at as they are, and I celebrate that all day, every day.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I know we're creeping up towards the end of time, so I'd like to throw one other thing out to you that I'm sure people would like to know. When you guys are looking out into the industry, lots of people look to you now as an inspiration. Who do you look to as an inspiration, or to what do you look as an inspiration when you're thinking about the landscape?
That's a good question.
I think one of the reasons Lounge has been so successful is because the way we do things quite unique. So it's because I don't read any like business books or anything like that. Don't read any fashion trends on purpose, because essentially don't want to be in that mold and do things the way it's been done before. So the idea is that you come to the party with a total fresh, like kind of blank canvas, and you just do it your way. That's why when we started Lounge, because we didn't come from fashion backgrounds, we didn't follow any kind of trends or someone inspiration. That we didn't work to a spring, summer, or winter catalogue. It was just an always on. We'd sell stuff year round. So it's a tricky one, because there's no company in particular, because like I say, we like to come at it with a completely fresh head and not being influenced by other people, essentially. Just do it our way and just build things that we think are cool.
I'd say one of the one things we would do, what we would be inspired by is, and this is really simple, but it comes back to the community. So if they're talking about something in our comments on a particular post on Instagram, they say, we want to see more of this, and loads of people are liking it, etc., and it's kicking off. That then inspires us, right, let's pull that out and let's make a decision based off the back of that. And I think that really is where like the future decisions that we make generally come from.
That's really, really insightful and interesting. I think when you're looking at a brand from the outside, it's always interesting to understand how the minds of people that are thinking behind the brand and how they're thinking about it and where it came from. And a reminder, there is no one path. Everybody has a different paths, right? And you take inspiration, and taking inspiration from your own fantastic ideas feels like a pretty good mantra to me. I mean, what's wrong with that, right? And I think that's wonderful, because that's doing things the same way over and over again. That doesn't work, and it's not exciting. I think what's exciting is when you do something new in a different way. And to the point you made, Dan, doesn't always work. Doesn't mean it wasn't worth doing and trying. So I take a lot of inspiration from that, for what it's worth. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything that I didn't chat with you guys about that you wanted to share about the business or about kind of your journey that you think would be, we've got a bunch of retailers and e-commerce professionals sitting here, and they're interested in learning from you and what you've done, and maybe not exactly how it applies to their business, but how maybe they think it applies to how they think. Maybe it might be a better connection.
Yeah, I think it's tricky when people obviously kind of try to make comparisons, because like I kind of said earlier, when we started Lounge with influencer marketing and paid social, the likes of Facebook and Instagram, going back 6 years, it's so different then. You can't take those learnings to this day and age. It just wouldn't work. I say to a lot of the kind of social brands that are trying to make it now, if you're coming cold into this market now, you'd need a lot of money and a lot of experience. It wasn't like we were essentially built in a time where it was just growing and we could test and learn with very small amounts of money. Whereas it's still possible, I think, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot harder than it was. So it's not like you can instantly take learnings from something that's already been done, but there will be ways in it. It's just finding them. That's not helpful, I know. It's the reality though of I guess taking someone's advice and going, oh, I'm going to do that, because it won't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
But there will be another twist just to kind of enter a market. And obviously, as you scale up and you become a bigger business, you're not a startup anymore. So obviously, you take different learnings. But yeah.
Well, I think there's a difference between taking inspiration and necessarily doing exactly the same. And I think what I would look at in terms of what you're saying is some of the things that you've done is you found a niche in the marketplace. You found a different way to go to market. And just because those two things aren't necessarily as perhaps available as they were 5-6 years ago, it's looking for those niches, right? It's what's different for people today. And that's what I would take from everything that you said, is to sit down and really put that. Sounds to me like you put a lot of thought and energy into that, and that's continued to drive you forward. And I think that, for me, that certainly ticks the box of information for me and inspiration, and I think it is helpful. So there you go.
Thank you.
Anytime. Right, you guys, I know you've got a really busy day, and I know you've got other commitments and what have you. So I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I knew it was going to be. Really enjoyed learning more about the Lounge business. Thanks for making time for the festival, and want to wish you nothing but the best of luck as the journey progresses. And I know I'm certainly, and I'm sure the rest of us are really looking forward to the next chapter in the Lounge story. And hopefully we'll get a chance to share it with you. So thanks again, you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Absolute pleasure. Such an incredible brand, wasn't it, everybody? And they're just remarkable co-founders with just a really wonderful outlook on how they do things and how much they care about their brand. So I hope you enjoyed it. And I have to say, I think after what's been a difficult year for all of us, it's so refreshing to actually get a chance to hear some really uplifting success stories. And on that theme, speaking of success, our next two speakers are experts when it comes to helping our Emarsys customers drive successful customer engagements that connect directly to customer lifetime value. Ben and Courtney from Emarsys are going to rejoin us in a minute to share both the challenges and opportunities associated with chasing that holy grail of delivering long-term customer value, something we all worry about, and balancing it while also managing to meet your short-term business goals and profit margins. I think this is going to be an insights-packed session, so I don't want to delay. Let's get started. Ben, Courtney, back over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate the handover again. And Ben, just going to check and make sure you've joined us as well.
Yeah. No, I'm packed with insights. I'm ready, Courtney. I'm ready.
Thank God. I thought you'd be hanging, but don't do that. Stay with me here.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Well, as Sarah alluded to, we're going to kind of just talk a little bit, expanding on the conversation we actually had earlier with the panel, which was fantastic. And, Ben and I didn't prepare for all of the other speakers, and it's been really fascinating to hear how Bobby and Antoni and, their messaging and kind of what they're saying, it's all been so wrapped together. Because it's like we've got to have a passion and a reason to be excited about what we're doing. And I think that just speaks so much around what, Ben, you and I spend a lot of our days talking about and thinking about, which is how do we create these surprise and delight experiences on all the different marketing engagement points.
Yeah, look, I mean, and I know, look, we work for a software company, Courts, and this whole thing is about software. But what's come through in everyone, what everyone's talked about today, is the importance of having the right team around you and the importance of putting the priority on actually doing the work. And this sort of slide that we've rolled up is something I've been hiding behind ever since it was created. And it's super relevant, right? That idea of it's hard to do. And technology is a huge enabler, and we know we've got the best in the business, but it's really, have you got the story behind the brand, first of all, and then have you got the people who see the priority of getting it done, actually doing it. So what we were hearing from Lounge about hard work, again, it's not the fashionable message, but it's so critical. And we know those customers that we see, whether it be a PUMA who are super established or right down to, not down to, but down to Joy who are just starting again from scratch. Right. It's about that passion, that story. And then, of course, we've got COVID driving that change, right. Necessity being the mother, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this relentless perseverance to not just settle on doing well, right? And being able to feel that you are challenged every day to give your customer a better experience with the brand than what you gave them yesterday. And it's just that in itself gives us so much, I think, for me, empathy for the marketer that's in the seat every day, right? And thinking about how we are forced to really pivot back and forth to understand in the last 365 days, not only the consumer's behavior changed, their emotions changed, their sentiment changed, the way they were living changed, and marketers were all of a sudden presented with this need to deliver on this personalization, I will say, that we're all after. And it's truly something that I think has changed even the KPIs that marketers are going to look at going forward, where we may have spent time looking at opens and clicks and click to page and all of those things. But how do we really take the dollars we've invested to get somebody engaged with the brand and then leverage that for years to come by continuing to give them that experience?
Yeah, there's two things, right? Anna talked about having buying a legacy brand with fantastic amounts of loyalty and being in the position to be able to rebuild effectively a tech stack around the customer because she's starting from scratch with her business partners, right? And we know every business, this is not retail and e-com, every business grows up pursuing revenue. So, it's kind of why we turned up in the first place, right? And so with retail and e-commerce, what you see is if that channel's performing or if that product's selling, then all focus goes on to that for that period of time while that's moving, while that inventory is shifting. And so what you see is these businesses that grow up and evolve around revenue opportunities. And then when you try and then retrofit personalization, which is essential, it's got to happen because it works. It's so important. You've then got those challenges of going back and stitching all those bits together. And that's the hard work that we talked about at the start. What's happened now is it's a must because it's become so competitive online. It's been for a year or more the only place to engage your customer. What's been interesting for me is, if you're a bricks and clicks retailer, you're looking to supplement the lost revenue from your stores with your online revenue. So you're obviously laser focused on moving stock, right? It makes sense. But at the same time, what you've got to realize is as the pressure comes on acquisition, Lounge are being super smart, doing all their acquisition on social, right? But what you've got here is if the pressure comes down on acquisition, you've really got to look after the customers you've already paid to acquire. Right. And that means you can't just go for the sale all the time. And I think this is something that not every organization wants to hear. They don't want to hear that you've got to build that relationship over time. The value exchange isn't simply money off, buy something else, buy something more, buy. It has to be some kind of value-based exchange where you start to feel an affinity, a loyalty to that brand. And we've heard that with Lounge, right, where they feel like they really connect with that network of their customers, right?
Right, and it's been more important than ever because, to your point, your consumer is likely not going to buy every time they engage with your brand. And almost in a way, I would challenge, we wouldn't want that, right? If we're truly on the quest for loyalty and that lifetime together, it's not always a financial exchange. And so it's been so important to start digging deeper into content and into messaging and into lifestyle, so that consumers start feeling like they are a part of Lounge, right? Or a part of the brand with PUMA and Rick and Joy and so forth that we've talked to today. And it is becoming more important than ever that part of the marketer's role and the engagement is true, right? We can't just promote, because people they'll get tired of that, right? And I don't know, you and I have spent a lot of time having a philosophy, if you will, around that whole strategy.
Well, if that's how you drive LTV, lifetime value, try and stay acronym free. If that's how you drive lifetime value, then the relationship that you have with your customer is of a lower value. So if the only reason I'm coming to you is because you're the best price on the block, Amazon, then I'm not necessarily, and obviously they're quite good at distribution, then I'm not necessarily. They're not bad. Then I don't necessarily have loyalty to you. If someone offers me the same product at a slightly lower price point and they can still deliver tomorrow, I'm gone. So unless you build that some kind of emotional connection, then it's not going to happen. And you build a emotional connection by building trust. And you build trust by not putting your hand in your customer's pocket every time they walk through the door. And so I think, but that takes courage. That takes courage for a brand to do that, to not always chase the revenue, because that's why we're here again, right? We're here to chase the revenue.
Exactly. Most of us, I should say, aren't running a nonprofit, right? So the bottom line is still important. And I hear so much pressure on marketing to push the button, send the SMS, send the email, send the push notification, whatever it is, right? Channel agnostic. Yeah. Because when we do that on promo, we get revenue. But it's really that middle ground of a customer dialogue that is so critical to go towards that coveted lifetime value exchange with the customer, right?
Yeah, but there's two things, right? So first of all, define lifetime. So you sit in front of somebody who tells you that their LTV is a certain dollar or euro value. When you ask the second question is over what period did you achieve that? And they say 18 months. So then you suddenly realize, well, that's an interesting lifetime. So when you then sit in front of somebody else in a different vertical or some other business, and they tell you that lifetime value has been accrued over 5 years, what do you imply? What do you infer from that? That feels more like a lifetime, right? So often we're not seeing our customers ask that second question, that second dimension of time elapsed. Mm-hmm. The longer you keep someone, the more money they're going to spend. So it's not necessarily chasing them down over that first 18 months. Having said that, I mean, if we look at the slide that we've put up, there's going to be a large part of your customer base that Rick was talking about it, the one and dones, the guys that come in and buy. You're not going to say no. You're not going to shut the door to someone that comes in just to buy once. Sorry, no, we're only interested in a loyal customer. Thank you. So it's that you have to be able to modulate your approach between, okay, we'll take that revenue for those customers there, but we're always looking at rolling those customers up into a more loyal segment. And we know that, I mean, I've been in this industry, this particular part of marketing, I'm going to call it marketing automation, which I realize is slightly off script, but for about 6 years. And most of the businesses you go in front of are still sending a lot of newsletters and doing some triggers, right, regardless of the channel, right? And so that's shifted immeasurably in the last 18 months to where we're seeing much more advanced customer journeys actually being implemented. They're being done. And that's good news, because that's what we've been telling people, not selfishly because we want them to use our technology, but because we know it works, right? So that's positive. Huh?
Well, and I'll also we started this a little bit on the earlier panel, but isn't it been interesting as well over the last 18 months when product wasn't necessarily available, and marketers now had a new task at hand where they couldn't get the product that they have always been selling to the customer, but they couldn't afford to stop speaking to them. I know you've got some interesting stories around that, because I find it fascinating, and it really did have an impact shift on how we were messaging and communicating with our customer.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in a number of occasions where inventory's just literally disappeared. And I think, speaking from it, I mean, my role is global, and I used to actually be able to travel. But now, it still remains global, just digitally global. Well, what I can say is in the UK with Brexit happening, there's been a lot of difficulty for brand bringing in goods from the European Union. So what politically? There's people listening to this all over the world. Who cares about Brexit? The point is, if your inventory's stuck, and how are you going to reflect that? And how are you going to prevent that customer from churning, leaving, defecting, choose your description? That's really important. And again, if you haven't created that emotional connection with that customer, if you don't have the channels and the technology and the access to have a dialogue beyond buy this, buy this, buy this, then how do you keep them warm while they're coming onto your site and realizing, hey, that that dress I wanted isn't there anymore? You've got to keep them at that point. Yes, can you refer them to another product? Sure. But can you rely on their patience while you fix it?
Right.
If they're loyal, yeah. If they're not, then no. So, it's super important to really think about the customer and put yourself in her shoes rather than just chase that revenue down all the time,
Right. I mean, I was so delighted to be in so many conversations with marketers, executives, when the reality was, hey, Court, we don't have inventory, or we had to shut down a factory to get whatever we were looking for. And we pivoted into, well, what makes your brand special? What do you do different? And we started telling this narrative to their customer base. And then when product came back in and they could sell, the coolest part, Ben, was they didn't miss a beat. Customers were engaging better than ever. They were buying it. it was there. There was a tolerance and an understanding that, you know, that brand respected me as an individual, even when I couldn't convert from them. And when I look back on the last 13 months, those are the inspirational stories that really get me motivated every day. That what a cool opportunity you and I have to work with brands that on a dime will pivot in such a way that can keep their customer despite not being able to sell them anything. Like, wild, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's also it's a huge endorsement of the work they've done building it. Sorry, I'm the slide master here. For those of you who don't realise, clicking through and making Courtney change topic. but the other thing, another really interesting component. This has been the case again for 6 years. Is that the retention of customers is generally the poor cousin to the acquisition of customers. So again, we've heard Lounge and PUMA talk about this. PUMA talk about how efficient they are at bringing in one-time buyers, first-time buyers, and they're extremely good at that. They've got a very high brand profile, right? What we are now seeing is that retention marketing is taking more budget as acquisition gets more tricky with data protection, CCPA, GDPR, cookies being shut down. You know, it's much harder to go and follow people around the internet. The team sizes are beginning to change. Now, what I've seen, regardless of the size of the business, is there's about 1.5 people actually doing the work across channels to retain customers, actually doing it. They'll be far more involved in provisioning the data, thinking about the strategy, far more. But when push comes to shove, day to day, it's 1.5 people. And those 1.5 people are relatively junior, third, fourth job, young marketers looking to progress, and they're there for about 1.5 years. And so any personalization that happens, any initiatives that get put in, it's so important that awareness is above that operational team, so that consistency is there. Otherwise, what we see is new users of a piece of technology come in, disregard everything that's gone before. They want to do their new thing. Customer suffers. Right? Personalization stops, and it all restarts because that retention strategy isn't owned at a sufficiently high level. That's moving. I mean, that's definitely moving. Yeah.
Well, I think you kind of lead to a nice, I guess, kind of conclusion, if you will, because I think our time is wrapping up. But we've had to be flexible. We've had to be agile. We've had these conversations with our marketers about how to do that. And really, our passion is around helping align that strategy, that philosophy of really that lifetime, and then applying it in a way that they can actually execute it, do it in a way that they can pivot on a dime, and also make sure that they're still delivering to the demands of the business. Because to your point, everyone was understanding when you didn't have inventory. But when inventory came back, you better get on it because we've got to keep going, right? And that's where I think we're incredibly passionate about aligning tech to strategy and us bringing it all together.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not the place to be sales pitching, and you know, we promise that we don't, but it's the first time I've really felt acutely that the product strategy that we've got of putting startup tactics and strategies in the platform's really borne fruit, because people have been able to get started faster. And so because they've really needed to now, whereas before that need for speed is just generic, right? Everybody wants it yesterday. Now it's real. It's a real thing. So I think that, yeah, it's been such an interesting period where the people who've invested in the right technology, who have the right team, who have the right story, and who own that retention strategy at the right level within their businesses are winning.
Absolutely. And it comes back to really that alignment of knowing what value you bring to your customer, being able to articulate that and the value exchange you want to have with them, and then rolling up your sleeves and getting the job done. Right? Because we spent on either ends of those bookends, right? If we spent all of our time, we wouldn't succeed. It's that balance that we get that and have the opportunity to help lead through.
Yeah. I mean, everyone wants to do it. Everyone sees that we are all consumers as well. right? We know what it is to have a crummy customer experience. We know what that's like, whether it's, you know, a poorly performing commerce function, whether it's the fact that we're not getting personalized, whether it's the fact that inventory isn't there, whether it's the fact that delivery doesn't work, or returns are difficult, whatever it is, we know intimately what that's like. If you cross the fence and look at the organizations that are getting it right, a lot of them are dealing with legacy technology issues. Think about Joy wiping that clean. But the ones that are doing it are the ones that want to do it. If they want to do it, they are getting it done. It really is that simple. It's a question of will and priority, and that will and priority has moved up, right?
Right. And, you know, we are the lucky ones. We get to ride along with the brands and hear about these inspirational stories, and then have this small little footprint, if you will, on helping deliver. And that's been some of the most fun. But thanks for spending some more time. I thank you for sharing a little bit of your perspective. It's always fun to have some dialogue back and forth. And then the moral of this story is don't let Ben lead your slides, because he'll just keep going as he will. But in all seriousness, thanks so much, Ben. And Sarah, we'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Ben and Courtney. And Ben, I'm definitely not letting you drive my slides, just to be clear. But seriously, thanks you guys so much. That I cannot think of a better way to wrap up the festival main stage than hearing from both of you on the ever important topic of customer lifetime value. I think in all of the stories you told and the insights you gave, there were a lot of things for everyone to take away and think about. So thank you so much. I'd like to give an additional thank you to all of our speakers, not just today, but throughout the festival. And to all of those of you who've joined us, because without you, the festival doesn't happen. So thank you. It's been a fantastic couple of days. But we're not quite done yet. There is still more for those of you that have the appetite. Once we wrap up main stage, there are a couple of fantastic sessions that you might want to check out. I'll pull out a couple of highlights: Office Depot, Klarna, Jolyn and City Beach together, and one last panel with the amazing Don Brett, including Kimberly Clark, Elf Cosmetics, and more. And don't forget, all of the festival content will be available on demand. So I'd like to invite you to keep coming back to the Hub to enjoy the sessions that you have missed as and when you have the time. And if by chance the festival has piqued your curiosity a bit about our omnichannel customer engagement platform and how it might help you drive positive outcomes for your brand, then I'd like to extend an invitation to join us for our live demo next Wednesday, June 23rd. We give power back to marketeers and fuel online, mobile, and offline growth through our platform. We try to save you valuable time and execution, improve your speed to market, accelerate time to value, ensuring your teams focus on the customer's life cycle stages and campaigns that help you drive incremental revenue. We'd love to show you how you can deliver omni-channel marketing magic from a single place, and how our AI-driven platform can have you and your teams easily delivering sophisticated, automated, multi-channel marketing, truly fit for a digitally accelerated era. So to join us, you have a magic hat icon in front of you in the menu. Just give it a click, or head back over to the Retail Revival Hub, and you'll find the session listed under Mainstage Group. Look forward to seeing you there. Well, this has been a fantastic festival. But just before we all head off to the last few sessions, I'd love to take just a moment and take a look back to celebrate the last 3 days. So it's always hard to say goodbye. So instead, I'd rather say thank you once again so much for joining us, and leave you with, we'll see you next year.